Hello there, and welcome back to the Showing Up to Life podcast and YouTube channel. My name is Art Burns. Really excited to be back here with you today. I know it's been the schedule's been a little crazy lately, a little bit up and down, a little bit scarce, and I just wanted you to know I'm really happy to be here to record a little episode here in the little time that I have on this Sunday morning. So today I want to talk about authenticity. Okay, because authenticity, I want to talk about not just the concept of authenticity, but the absolute power of authenticity. Because it is when we can be our true, authentic selves, that's when we realize that we are really a one of a kind. Every single one of us is a one of a kind. But there are so many ways in our lives in which we are expected to sort of homogenize with another sort of subgroup of the world, of society, whatever it is. You know, recently I was thinking, I'm not a typical fill in the blank, right? Like for me, I'm not a typical hockey player. I play hockey 4 or 5 times a week. But if you stand me in a room with the other people I play hockey with, I am not like them. I am different. Okay. I'm not a typical deadhead. I'm not a typical father. I'm not a typical vegan. I'm not a typical reader. I'm not a typical writer. I'm not a typical anything. Now, that's not to say that I'm trying to be different, and it's not to say that there's some, value in being different and even being unique. I mean, there's nothing necessarily special about being unique, but there's something unique about being special. And the thing is that once we can all kind of come into contact and touch that, connect with that realness of us, right? That true, sense of this is me. Now, it doesn't have to be anything. And again, you don't have to be different, right? It's okay if you are very much like some other subset of that. That does not make you inauthentic. The question is, are we being authentic, or are we giving up our authenticity in the service and in the interest of connection? Because as I've talked about here in this podcast many times before, all of us, every human being has two specific biological imperatives, among many others, but there's two that I'm talking about here today they're always sort of in tension and at odds with one another. The first biological imperative is for our authenticity, because our authenticity, when we can really connect with what makes us us, right? Like when we understand the things that make us happy, the things that cause us struggle, the things that lift us up versus the things that drag us down, right? When we start to come into contact and really understand these things, that's when we give way to our intuition. Right? That's when we can listen to ourselves and say, no, this is what's best for me, no matter what anybody else is saying, no matter what the television's saying, no matter what my friends are saying, no matter what my partner's saying, my work is saying, this is the thing for me. And when we can make decisions based on that, or make decisions from that space of realness and authenticity, of the true understanding and grasp of me, right? Then life takes on a whole different complexion, my friends, a whole different complexion. Because that's when we can start to really release our attachments. And that's when we can start to really accept the things that we're resisting. Because in that resistance and in that attachment is almost always, comes from that same tension between the authenticity and the other biological imperative that we all share, which is the biological imperative of connection, right? Especially when we were young. Right? We all needed to be connected to other people. And as I say, especially when we were young, when we were young, it was a life and death proposition, right? We literally could not have survived on our own. We needed the caregivers. We needed the friends. We needed the school, the teachers and the principals and everything. We needed those people to accept us, because without that connection, without that inclusion in what we might call a tribe, we would have been out in the wilderness and we would have perished. That's not even that's not even a hyperbolic, overstatement here. I mean, it's true. If you put especially for humans, the first 9 months of our lives are essentially an external gestation period, right? Almost like a marsupial in a sack, right? Like that's why, we're so, always holding babies so close to the chest, because that's what the baby needs. And without that, the baby literally would perish. So we have this imperative to be connected and to be, part of this, group of people where we find our safety. And we also have an imperative to be our authentic and in some ways our unique self. So for our whole lives, what we're grappling with is this again, a tension between the need for connection, the need for inclusion, and the reality that we believe that if I am me, if I don't bend myself to this person's desire or this group's desire, then I'm not going to get that connection. Now, again, for most of us, this is a habit that starts when we're like 3 years old. And it just keeps going. It starts with our parents, but then it goes into school, and then it goes into jobs, and then it goes into, our own families and our own friends. And for a lot of us, there's this authenticity has been lost for a long, long, long time. So long that what is it even? I mean, is it even there? And that's another point about authenticity, is that it's not something that we have to, as I've talked about here before as well, it's not something we have to return to. Your authenticity includes everything you've gone through up until this point. This is you, right? So if, you could even look at it as a physical thing, right? If somebody has lost a finger, for instance, right? Well, that doesn't make them inauthentic, right? Like from now on, they are authentically someone with 9 fingers. They don't have to get their finger back in order for them to be authentic, right? And so the idea here is not to say, how do I change myself to be this authentic person? Because that's just another form of the same, sort of abandonment of authenticity that was done in the service of the connection in the first place. Right? So it's almost like you're thinking, how do I not be connected? And that's not the answer either, right? That is not the answer. You see, I am not a typical hockey player. I mean, I'm really not. I mean, most people, that I play hockey with, we do not gel on any level outside of hockey. My politics are different. My, livelihood is different. My aspirations are different. I don't go out and drink beer and watch hockey games and stuff like that on so many levels. But I am still accepted within this community of hockey players just based on my authenticity of my hockey playing. It doesn't have to be anything more than that, right? And that's the key, right? Can I stand in that? Can I rest in that ability to be me in all of my weirdness and still be within this connected space based on something that we have in common, right? Now, of course, hockey is an easy thing to sort of say because it's such a specific thing, right? Like we all love hockey, so that's the thing that makes the connection, right? But there is still like a sort of in the back of my mind, or I could say maybe 20 years ago, had I come back into the hockey world, then I might have felt like, well, I should cut my hair because I don't look like a hockey player. I should dress in a certain way. I should talk in a certain way. I should make sure that I'm watching hockey every night so that I don't even have a TV now. Like I never watch hockey on TV, right? Which is very, very much different from all these people. And when they're talking about last night's hockey game, I'm like, yeah, okay. I have no idea what you're talking about because I didn't see it. But it doesn't make me any less authentic of a hockey player just because I didn't see the stuff that you guys are talking about and you ladies are talking about, because it is co-ed leagues, which I love, by the way. And so the idea then is not to because again, if what we're talking about is the things that pull us away from our authenticity, right? It's at the heart of it is that idea of being connected, right? That is almost always the sort of driving force that separates us from our authenticity. However, it's important to recognize that the connection that that's pulling us away from our authenticity is based upon the same aversion and attachment that we talk about here all the time. Okay? Because you become attached to this idea of how I'm supposed to be. And we become aversive to being anything that I'm not supposed to be. Right. So these things are so whether I'm trying to so my point with that is that if I'm striving to find some level of authenticity, then I'm just engaging in that same attachment and aversion. As if I'm giving up my authenticity in the interest of connection. You see, it's the same exact process. And in each of these processes, as we all know, or as I've said here before, I should say, when we are experiencing attachment and we are experiencing aversion, which arises from the delusion, right? The delusion that says like, oh, I can't be a good hockey player if I'm not, if I have long hair and listen to the Grateful Dead, right? I have to be that kind of person in order to be a hockey player, right? That's a delusion. Right, which gives way then to the attachment. I got to only do the things that make me look like everybody else, sound like everybody else, and be like everybody else so that I can be accepted here, right? Or the aversion to anything that's not that, right? The resistance that that's not who I really am, right? Anytime we experience the delusion, the attachment, or the aversion, we're going to experience negative emotions. And in those negative emotions are going to manifest in the body as a form of tension, as a form of strife kind of feeling. And then the thoughts that are going to arise from this emotional and physical experience are going to be negative. They're going to be self-critical. They're going to be pessimistic. They're going to be catastrophic or catastrophizing, I should say. And this is just how it's going to happen based on the aversion, the clinging, and the delusion, right? There's no other way that it could happen, right? Like we can't be in a state of aversion and also be in a state of acceptance at the same time. It's impossible. The state of acceptance leads us to the positive emotions and the optimistic thoughts and the openness of the idea that, hey, I can be just the weird guy in the hockey team. And that's cool. They love me for being the weird guy on the hockey team. I don't have to be like the hockey team in order to enjoy and in order to really live fully my moment of being in the hockey team. And again, I'm using the hockey team as a very simple and easy illustration, but this applies to everything we do. I say I'm not even a typical deadhead, right? Yeah, sure, I still have some of the long hair and stuff, but I don't want to go to a Dead and Co show and get drunk all weekend. That's not what I do. It's never what it's been about for me. Not even back in the early days, it wasn't about but that's what I did in the early days because that's what I thought I needed to do to be accepted in this community. But it's okay to not do that stuff. And again, you can apply this to any area of your life. So now here's the really important thing here though, right? That it's not about achieving some sort of, approved, authentic self, right? That is gonna, because again, that is just another form of attachment that breeds aversion as well, that comes from a delusion, right? It's no different. And so if you do that, you're still going to experience the negative emotions, the tension in the body, and the catastrophizing, thoughts. Right? Even if you're doing the thing you're supposed to do, right? Because it's still a form of clinging and it's still a form of attachment. And it still is arising from a delusion that this is what has to be somehow. So instead, there's a different way we can approach this. And this is the way that we approach it with mindfulness and with self-compassion and kindness for ourselves and kindness for everyone else as well. And that is to say that when we find ourselves, and look, it all starts with awareness. Right? It all starts with awareness. And as we practice the work that I talk about here in the podcast, right? Whether that's a formal meditation practice or it's an informal practice of just checking in with ourselves throughout the day. I mean, I have so many clients who have not spent, they've tried here and there to do meditation. Some of them even got up to like 20 minutes I did today. It was amazing, right? But by and large, they were not able to do a regular sustained meditation practice. And just by checking in with themselves 4 or 5 times a day, they have changed their lives. Like they don't even recognize themselves. Okay, just from that one practice. So the first step then is to cultivate this awareness through these practices. Again, whether it's a formal meditation practice or it's an informal practice, like just being mindful while you're washing the dishes, checking in with yourself. And when I say checking in with yourself, what I mean is, and I can absolutely send you a simple document that explains this practice very, very, very quickly. I have it ready to go. It's right here. I can just send it as an attachment to an email. There's the 3 ways in which we experience our whole lives, right? Which is the physical body, the emotional experience, and the thoughts, right? The thoughts include the thoughts that just pop up into our mind throughout the day, but the thoughts also include the sort of narrative, the sort of, that voice in our head that says, oh man, if I'm going to be a hockey player, I better cut my hair, right? So as we bring awareness to these things and we check in, so again, pardon me, I was explaining that the check-in is just that. It's just checking in 4 or 5 times a day. What's feeling in my body? And specifically, we go in the chest area and the face. That's where we start, because that's where we're going to really feel the manifestation of the emotions. So we check in with what's happening in the body. Then we check in with what's happening in the emotions. And really, it doesn't have to be some kind of, we're not, Sherlock Holmes here. We're not trying to figure something out. We're just bringing a gentle awareness, a gentle inquiry. What am I feeling here? Right? Like, what's going on in my body? What's going on in my emotions? Am I feeling positive emotions, negative emotions? Something as simple as that. And then we take a moment and we listen to the thoughts. What are my thoughts really doing right now? Can I still myself and just observe the thoughts as they move through my mind? The answer is yes, you can. And as you do that, that's when you start to develop this self-awareness. And in that self-awareness is when you discover, when you find yourself, and it's like almost like a third-person perspective that you get on your own actions, right? But you find yourself, wait a second, I'm, editing myself and what I'm saying to these people because I'm afraid of them not liking me or something like that, right? So the idea then is that as we cultivate this self-awareness, we notice our abandonment of our authenticity for our connection. And so in that moment, it's not to say, oh no, I gotta, do something weird here because I need to be authentic. Even if that is what you're, the sort of idea that comes into your mind, that's not necessarily the thing, that could be a form of attachment. Often it is, right? So the idea is not to jump into action and just do something, but instead I invite you to, perform what we might call a gentle and kind and compassionate inquiry. Which is to say, what is it right now that I'm afraid of? What do I think is going to happen if I don't bend myself to this, group's, what I believe that they think they want? Because the thing is that again, it's the delusion is the belief that they expect something out of you. Most of the time, people don't expect something out of you. Now, yes, it's true that sometimes you're not going to get along with everyone. Not everybody's going to love you, and that's okay too. You don't need everyone to love you. It's okay that people don't like you. And it's okay for you not to like someone else. It's okay that you don't want to spend time with this person because their authentic self is this, it's bothersome to you in some way. But now again, that's another point of another opportunity for another gentle and compassionate inquiry. What is it about this person that bothers me? Because oftentimes we find, and this gets into the whole concept of projection, right? That, I recently read it in a beautifully put in a quote the other day. I am not who you think I am. You are who you think I am. That's pretty intense, but that's mostly what we're doing, right? Like when I get angry with my spouse that she's not cleaning up the kitchen, I'm really angry at myself for not having cleaned up the kitchen, right? Or I'm angry with the drive from my, childhood trauma that's associated with cleaning up the kitchen, right? But it's not the kitchen that's not the thing, right? And so this projection that we find ourselves, we can again find where we're projecting, and we can find where other people are projecting onto us, but it all starts again in the same place, just like the discernment between authenticity and connection, and asking ourselves that gentle and compassionate and kind question of what is it that I'm afraid of? What do I think is going to happen? What do I think they think? And why do I think what they think? And the most important thing, though, is to recognize, and that's that sort of third person detachment that we get, which is to say, this isn't true. Just because I think it doesn't make it true. Right? Just because I think that this person thinks that I should be more, wearing a hockey t-shirt and not a tie-dye t-shirt, right? That I think somehow that this is going to, make this person not like me. That's a form of delusion. And so I asked him, and that's not necessarily untrue, but it's not true either, right? A broken clock is right twice a day, right? So it's a matter of asking ourselves those really beautiful and important questions. Is why do I believe this right now? And it's not to come up with the answer. Again, we're not Sherlock Holmes. We're not trying to solve a mystery here. We're just trying to understand ourselves. And as we come to that understanding of ourselves, that is our authenticity. So it's not something we have to create. It's not something we have to find or attach to or cultivate. It's simply something we have to allow to present itself. And we allow it to present itself through the simple practices that cultivate a non-judging self-awareness. All right, everybody. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. I know I did. I'll be back again soon, I promise. I'll take care. Okay, bye-bye.